Hey guys, Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you a comparison video today between the Nike Tiempo Legend 5 and the Nike Tiempo Legend 6. Legend 5 is the older model, Legend 6 is the newer model. A lot of people are trying to decide which one to buy or whether or not the upgrade from the Legend 5 to the Legend 6 is worth it. We're going to be covering all the differences in today's video, answering all the questions you guys have been asking me, and essentially giving you all the info that you could possibly want on both of these two shoes. So if you're interested in learning more, please stick around, watch the entire video, and with that being said, let's get right into the comparison. To start things off, let's talk about the uppers, because for me that is the biggest difference going from the Legend 5 to the Legend 6. What's interesting about that particular statement is while there is a big difference when you're talking about the actual uppers and their overall construction, the feel of wearing the shoe isn't that much different, meaning that when you make contact with the ball and just playing in them in general, they feel pretty much identical. What you're going to notice though is as soon as you start moving a little bit more quickly, making quick cuts and changes of direction in the Legend 6 versus the Legend 5, this is a shoe that keeps your foot locked down better and is just more responsive in general, and that has to do with some changes they've made to the actual upper. Now both of these shoes feature premium kangaroo leather uppers, no issues with quality with either of them. Basically the front 3/4 of the shoe are made from kangaroo leather. Both shoes feature ACC all conditions control. You can see the branding on the tongue. This one has it on the side. And like I said, they are very, very good in terms of providing that soft, natural kangaroo leather touch on the ball. And like I said, the quality of the leather is top notch. With the Legend 5, it's a more traditional layout in terms of the leather itself. It has this quilted stitching pattern at the front, which feels really good. I mean, no real issues here. The shoes don't overstretch as long as you get the right size from the get-go, although they will stretch during the break-in process, so please keep that in mind. And like I said, once broken in, it really does provide a nice, soft, natural, flexible sensation on your foot, as you would want from this style of shoe. It does have that traditional sensation about it. Laces run through the middle, as you guys can see. This does have an actual tongue, unlike the Legend 6, which we'll get into in just a second. The tongue is made from a thinner synthetic material with a memory foam pad. Don't really have any issues with it, but you will find that the tongue does fall slightly to the side as you wear them, so you may have to readjust the tongue every once in a while, because like I said, it does fall out of place, but not a deal breaker in my opinion. Beyond that, the upper is maybe a slight touch thicker in comparison to the Legend 6, but it's a very, very small difference. And like I said, you can easily go from the Legend 5 into the Legend 6 and not really feel like you have to get used to the shoe all over again. They feel quite similar. The other major difference you're going to notice with the upper is actually on the inside as opposed to the outside, because the Legend 5 features what they call a Hypershield liner. You can see the branding right here. This is something that has been eliminated going from the Legend 6. But there's a reason for that, and I'll explain in just a second. Now what the Hypershield liner is, it's actually a mesh-based lining material. It's actually the honeycomb mesh base layer that we saw on the Nike Hypervenom Phantom 1. You can see it there on the inside. And essentially what that does is it replaces several layers of nylon material as the liner. So what that does is, one, because there are less layers of materials, it makes for a less bulky feel on your foot. It's very comfortable against your foot, and it eliminates unnecessary stiffness of the actual upper, so you just really get that clean sensation of soft leather. It's very flexible and very natural on your foot. And two, it also, because it is an open mesh, doesn't lock in any moisture. So like any leather shoe, these things will absorb a fair amount of water if exposed to enough of it. But because the liner is completely open, it's not going to lock in any of that moisture. Therefore, the shoe technically will dry out a little bit more quickly. Although like any leather shoe, it does take a little bit longer than a synthetic shoe would to dry out completely. Now, like I said, if you want that traditional feel, the Legend 5 is great. It's an awesome shoe, even with the Legend 6 now out on the market. With that being said, the Legend 6 really does improve upon what the Legend 5 did so well. It provides that same super soft leather touch on the ball. You get the same amount of leather. Like I said, it's a little bit thinner in comparison to the Legend 5, but not something that is a major difference by any means. And again, it provides all the same kind of qualities of the Legend 6, minus that Hypershield liner. And you're probably wondering, why would they eliminate that? It seems like a really, really good feature, and it is. But they implemented something better, in my opinion, that offers better performance as opposed to having the shoe dry out a little bit more quickly, which I think is a pretty good trade-off. So you're going to notice two things with the upper. The upper doesn't really have all that much stitching. There's a little bit of a chevron pattern here running through the forefoot, but that's it. Very different from the Legend 5. That's because instead of using stitching as a reinforcement material for the upper, they've implemented an internal support cage, which you can very clearly see as the kind of under layer texturing on the surface of the leather. You can see this pattern beneath the actual leather. That's the internal support cage that basically spans the entire shoe. Now, what's interesting about this is it's very soft, it's very flexible, and when you actually put this shoe on your foot, you don't notice it at all. You don't feel it. There's no extra stiffness added to the leather. And like I said, if you didn't know it was there, you wouldn't know it was there. It's really that kind of well hidden and that well incorporated into the shoe itself. The only time you're going to notice it is when you start moving around a little bit more quickly, making those quick cuts and changes of direction, and you'll notice immediately that this upper just stays a lot firmer. It keeps your foot locked in place a lot better than the average traditional leather shoe would. Not just something like the Legend 5, but really any kind of standard all leather soccer shoe. This is much more responsive, much more secure, and it has a more modern sensation than you might expect in terms of the responsiveness that it has on offer from this style of shoe. So for me, that is a huge performance benefit coming from the Legend 5 to the Legend 6, and my personal favorite feature between the old and the new model. Really like how responsive this shoe is. The most responsive leather shoe while still maintaining a natural feel that has ever been released to the public. Another thing that has changed with this particular shoe, and this impacts more so the fit as opposed to the actual performance, is the one-piece construction. So you'll find that this does not have an actual tongue. The tongue is still made from synthetic and it still has a memory foam insert through the middle, but it's bonded for the bottom 4 lace holes on either side, and then at the top 2 it is left completely free like a normal tongue. So with this, it means that the shoe is really snug through the forefoot and midfoot area just because it is fully attached here. Is it tight? No, but it's definitely more snug than what you're going to find with the Legend 5, especially at first, but give the shoe some break-in time. The leather will stretch. The cage doesn't seem to restrict that. And like I said, it just feels very good. It gives you more of a sensation of security as opposed to the shoe kind of opening up on you and loosening after half an hour or an hour of wear time. This really holds your foot in place really firmly and just maintains the same tightness throughout your entire session. Plus, it doesn't allow the tongue to slide from side to side because it actually can't. It's fixed in place. Plus, you don't have any overlapping materials. It creates for a lot less bulk across the top of your foot, so you get an even more uniform touch across the entire surface of the shoe as opposed to the Legend 5, where, like I said, you do have that tongue that does slide around and can kind of change the feel of the shoe across the top of the foot depending on what position that tongue is at any given moment, really. So a little bit more consistency, a lot more responsiveness from the Legend 6 over the Legend 5, but they're both absolutely fantastic shoes, and if you're looking for a traditional leather feel, they'll both provide that very well. Next, let's talk about the sole plates and stud patterns, where really they haven't changed anything coming from the Legend 5 to the Legend 6. The one major characteristic in regards to the sole plate that you need to keep in mind is that it is on the thinner side. You can see it by the side profile, and it definitely is something that you can feel, especially if you play on harder ground. So if you frequently play on hard ground playing surfaces, probably not the best shoe for you, but as long as you play on fairly nice fields, stud pressure should never be an issue. What's nice about the thinner sole plate is that it makes the shoe feel very flexible, especially after a couple hours of wear time, and it just gives you a nice natural sensation that you would want from this style of shoe. In regards to the actual stud patterns, again, nothing has changed coming from the Legend 5 to the Legend 6. Everything is 100% identical, and that's not a bad thing at all. Essentially what you're getting is a stud pattern with bladed heel studs and then conical studs in the forefoot with bladed support studs running down the middle. Now, while the studs are conical in shape and it looks to be a fairly traditional layout, because the conical studs themselves are fairly narrow in profile and actually quite long, they dig in really nicely and provide more bite than you might expect from this style of stud pattern. You get good stability at the heel from the blades, and like I said, the overall bite you get is pretty good when pushing off in any direction. Plus they're conical in shape, so you have that freedom to twist and pivot when your foot is actually planted. One of my personal favorite stud patterns to use, no issues with it whatsoever on firm natural grass. And of course, being that this is a top-end Nike model, whether it's the Legend 5 or the Legend 6, you can get this in a firm ground, a soft ground pro, or an artificial grass sole plate, depending on what playing surface you're going to be using them on. In terms of weight, there isn't a lot that separates the Legend 5 and the Legend 6, but for the sake of comparison, we're going to be weighing both shoes for you today in real time using this scale. Keep in mind, both shoes that I have right here are in brand new condition and are both the exact same size 9 US, so this is a very fair comparison. We'll start off with the Legend 5, throw it on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.15 ounces, the equivalent of 231 grams, which is actually pretty light for this style of shoe. So we'll change the scale back to ounces, pull these off, and we'll throw on the Legend 6, again, brand new condition, size 9.5 US. We're gonna throw them on the scale, and you can see that they weigh in at 8.7 ounces, the equivalent of 246 grams. So that's a weight difference of about a ½ ounce or so, which could seem like a lot depending on how familiar you are with soccer shoe weights, but you're still in that 8-ounce range for a full leather shoe. And given that the Legend 6 does have a slightly more snug fit and is a lot more responsive than the Legend 5, they don't feel any heavier on your feet at all. If anything, I would argue that because the fit is a little bit more snug, the shoe feels slightly less sloppy and therefore a little bit lighter on your feet than what you get with the Legend 5, even though it technically isn't a lighter shoe. Either way, ½ ounce is not a significant weight difference. You're not really going to notice much of a difference in hand and especially not on feet. So again, if you're looking for a full leather shoe with premium kangaroo leather that fits really well, is super comfortable, offers great traction, and isn't heavy, then the Legend 5 or the Legend 6 are both really, really solid options. As far as fit and feel is concerned, these two shoes are actually very similar to each other. Obviously on my right foot, I have the Legend 5. On my left foot, I have the Legend 6. And really, the biggest thing you're going to notice as a difference between these two shoes, especially from right out of the box, is that the Legend 6 does have a slightly more snug, closer to the foot feel, just because of that one-piece construction. The actual shape of the shoe is the same between the Legend 5 and 6, just because they're built on the exact same sole plate. So the overall shape, like I said, is no different between these two. You're just going to find that the Legend 6 upper is slightly lower volume, but if you fit in the Legend 5, you're unlikely to have any issues fitting in the Legend 6, because like I said, they are actually quite similar to each other. Like any leather shoe, some break-in time is required, not so much for the shoes to feel comfortable, because I would argue that these are both very comfortable shoes out of the box, but more so just to allow the leather to adjust. It'll soften up over time, stretch a little bit to the shape of your foot, and become that much more comfortable. As far as how that internal support cage affects the leather stretching on the Legend 6, it doesn't really affect it at all. The shoe will expand ever so slightly like any normal leather shoe would. But again, you definitely will notice that difference when you make those quick cuts and change of direction in terms of the shoe being a lot more responsive and just holding your foot in place that much better. Plus, like I mentioned earlier, I really like the one-piece design in the Legend 6 in that it holds the shoe tighter on your foot over the entire playing session, as opposed to having to relace them 2 or 3 times to maintain the same level of tightness. As far as width is concerned, they're both leather shoes. They're both not narrow by any means. They're going to be suitable for most foot types. So as long as you don't have extremely wide feet, these are going to fit just about everybody. And as far as sizing is concerned, they both run about a ½ size small. I wore a size 9.5 US in the Legend 5 and a 9.5 US in the Legend 6. And the fit and the length is absolutely perfect. Sizing is the same between both of these two shoes. Normally I wear a 9. In these two, I bump it up to a 9.5. So if you are looking to order a pair of these for yourself, I would strongly recommend going a ½ size up. Or if you're coming from the Legend 5 and you want to get a pair of Legend 6s, I would recommend sticking with the same size for the same fit. All right, guys, that is it for my comparison between the Legend 5 and the Legend 6. These are both absolutely fantastic shoes, but at the end of all these videos, you guys always seem to want to know which is my favorite of the two. And of these two shoes, I definitely do prefer the Legend 6. It does everything that the Legend 5 does, but is a little bit more responsive and has a slightly better fit as well. So for me, if I'm picking between the two, the Legend 6 is definitely the better shoe in terms of overall performance. But again, that does not make the Legend 5 bad. It's still a great performer. It's still a great shoe. And if you can pick it up for half the price of a pair of Legend 6s, it's a really good value as well. So that's pretty much it in terms of my comparison, guys. Hopefully you found it helpful. If you did, be sure to support the video with a like. If you have any questions at all regarding either of these two shoes, leave them down below in the comments and I definitely will get an answer out to you. If you're interested in purchasing either of these two shoes, there will be links to the review pages on my website down below in the description of this video, and on both of those review pages you will find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes where you'll be able to pick up both of these shoes below their normal retail prices. So again, if you're interested in a pair, links are down below in the description. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information down below in the description of this video as well. And other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed today's video, and as always, thanks for watching.